Okay, this is what's referred to as Columbian colored lab-created emerald. There's generally two colors, Columbian and Zambian, which is a little darker than the Columbian. This comes from a Russian lab that I got it from. It has some inclusions. It's not perfectly clean. There's a veil, two veils in it. But I use this to cut a teardrop design. A while back I test cut a pear-shaped gem fastening diagram called Allen's Challenge using a piece of Zambian colored emerald rough, which had been created by the Chatham family in their lab. Allen's Challenge was designed by Arya Akvan. I wanted to test cut a gemstone with this design because BOPIE, my wife, needs a pear-shaped emerald cut to fit perfectly into a already existing 14 karat gold ring which has diamond accents on it. So now that I have cut this design once, I feel ready to cut another piece of lab-created emerald into a pear shape using this same design and hit the length to width perfectly so that the gem fits into the ring BOPIE has waiting. The ring that BOPIE has was made to hold a 4 karat diamond as the center stone. I will need to know what measurements to cut my emerald at so that it will fit into this mounting. I could take my calipers and measure the opening between the prongs, but I could also get an even better idea of the length to width measurements that are needed to perfectly fit this mounting by looking at some GIA grading reports of a few diamonds. GIA grading reports give a lot of information on cut stones. So what are the measurements for a standard 4 karat pear-shaped diamond? Well, if you go online and look at a few 4 karat pear-shaped diamonds, and I looked at ones that were graded at either good or very good for their cut by GIA, and you jot down the measurements, what you'll come up with is that your emerald, my emerald, will need to be in the neighborhood of just under 13 millimeters long, or about 13 millimeters, to very close to 8.6 millimeters wide, because that's the approximate size of a 4 karat pear-shaped diamond. And there is a small amount of variation in the size of 4 karat pear-shaped diamonds, but not much. If I cut the emerald correctly, and if BOPIE is able to mount the emerald into the ring in time, then I will show you what the final ring looks like at the end of this video. And trust me, it's an awesome looking ring. But it's a lot of ifs, so we'll kind of have to wait to see. Here is a link to the video where I test cut this pear-shaped design and talk about how I tweaked the design. I did tweak Arya's design slightly using GemCut Studio software. Now here are the cutting instructions and information for the tweaked design of Allen's Challenge, which I adjusted slightly for beryl or emerald. I was able to improve the brightness slightly, and more importantly for me, I was able to reduce the size of the pavilion slightly. And that will make it much easier to fit into this ring, which I won't be able to modify as it's already been cast and already has a number of diamond accent gemstones in the ring. Now in the gem cutting community, we don't talk much about it, but there often are issues with trying to mount a colored gemstone into a mounting that was designed for a diamond, like a lot of standard mountings that you buy are. Because the refractive index of diamond is significantly different than virtually any colored gemstone, the pavilion of a diamond gemstone is often smaller than that of a colored gemstone. And this causes a challenge for jewelers when they try to mount a colored gemstone into a lot of cases, into a standard mounting that was designed for diamond. So the solution is try to cut the pavilion as small as possible, but you do need to pay attention to the critical angle. For our pear-shaped man-made Columbian emerald, this is the way that we want it, the rough to go into the spindle of our machine with the top being at the 96 index. So we put the rough in, orient it so that the 96 index tooth is right there, and put it in like that with the dot being slightly not centered, but just as it's not really centered here, it's kind of lower. The dot should be centered lower. That's where the center point's going to be. Now I did move it up a little bit, and that's because I have an inclusion at the very edge of this rough that I want to cut out. So I adjusted my my stone on the dot there. But this is the way we orient it, and now we're ready to start cutting our emerald. Okay, I've used the 210 grit topper to preform the emerald, and I think it helped me a lot by previously working this design with a kind of prototype, cutting it with the different smaller emerald. Went a lot smoother to get the this preforming. The stone's a little bit bigger than what I need. Because it's got a set mounting that it's going to go into, I need it to fit exactly. But it's better to have it too big at this point than too small. So I'm okay, and it's coming along. I'll probably go over it with a 320 grit topper because I do have to trim down the length and width a little bit before going to the 600 grit crystallite solid steel lap. I finished polishing the pavilion of our emerald. I used the creamway lap with a spray of cerium oxide and water, and it polished up beautifully. It's looking real good. I'll transfer it now and cut the upper half of our Columbian emerald. I finished pre-polishing our Columbian emerald with first with a 210 grit topper and then a 320 grit topper. And so now I'll use the 600 grit crystallite solid steel lap. Now there is one issue. It's not going to be a problem, but there's an issue with there's a fracture, one crack, internal inclusion right there that comes up. You can see it right there, and you can see that black spot right there. That's where it breaks the surface. So all it means is that if I were to use my normal pre-polishing, I'd be using a 3000 grit diamond on a bat lap. And if I do that, it forms a kind of a slurry, and that'll get sucked into that crack. So I need to switch out laps. That's why it's always, for me, always good to have different laps for different issues. So either I can use the lightning laps, 3000 grit, and they'll work fine. They don't form any slurry. Or I can skip the 3000 step and go straight to polish. But that's one issue that we're going to face, and that's one of the issues with the bat laps. I finished polishing the pear shaped of our Columbian colored emerald. So now I'll use the attack solvent that I'm still testing out, soak it in that to remove the two-part epoxy. Then I'll weigh it and measure it and send it off to BOPIE. I found that test cutting a lab-created emerald in Arya's design before cutting the final emerald really helped me understand how best to cut and polish this gemstone. This stone was a breeze to cut and polish, and it's mainly because I had previously cut it as a test. So in my opinion, a new cutter should not cut a Pear design as one of their first projects. I think, personally, the progression should be from a round to a step cut square to a step cut rectangle, and then maybe a triangle or oval before trying to tackle a Pear or even a marquee type design. But this design is not a difficult design. Arya has done a fantastic job in giving us a design that's easy to understand, easy to follow, and relatively easy to cut. I did follow Arya's instructions and sequence in cutting the crown because the table I cut early. Usually my normal technique is to cut the table last, but I went ahead and cut and polished the table when I got to it, Arya's design. And I do think this did help me to better line up some of the key meat points that just touched the crown. So I think it was good that Arya designed it that way. I'll have to look at it in the future because, again, my technique is normally to cut the table last. Also, I'm continuing to use the solvent, the product called Attack, instead of acetone to dissolve two-part epoxy from the gemstones and the DOPs. Attack, although significantly more pricey than acetone, seems to, well, it definitely does a quicker job of dissolving epoxy. Is that speed worth the extra cost? I'll kind of leave that up to you to decide. Acetone gets the job done, but it normally takes overnight. Please let me know in the comments what you think of this emerald. And as always, happy fasting, everyone.